Hi there, welcome to another tutorial on how to animate in TVpaint Animation Pro. And last week we covered the main panel, and in the main panel we covered the stroke tool. And this week we are going to be covering the line tool, and as we can see with the stroke tool we only had 4 different options. With the line tool we only have 2 different options. Now the line tool is very effective in different aspects of the animation workflow. One of the aspects that I'm going to show you is the perspective grid. And to create a perspective grid, all we do is we choose our line tool and we select our color to whatever color we need for our reference. Some people use blue, I use black. And then all we do is we first establish our horizon line for our composition. And to do this, we can either choose the upper thirds or the lower thirds. We don't want to mostly choose our horizon line to be in the middle because it makes the composition slightly boring. So I'm going to choose the bottom thirds. So to do this, all you do is you hold down the mouse button or your pen on your tablet, and as you can see, the line tool allows you to create lines in either direction. And if you want to lock this to make it a straight line for a horizon line, you can do this by pushing the shift key at any time while you have it held down, and it'll snap to either the horizontal or to the vertical axis. So you go ahead and let go of the mouse button and we create our horizon line. As you can see, mine is very faint, so we're going to increase the size of our brush and again apply that horizon line. And then from there we're going to build our perspective grid. Now our perspective grid we're going to be using, you can either use the 1-point, 2-point, or 3-point perspectives using the vanishing points. So I'm going to go ahead and stick 2 vanishing points on my horizon line. To do this I'm just going to use the stroke tool, and I'm going to place one here on the left side, and then I'm going to go ahead and just place one on the right side. Now these can be arbitrary points unless you have an exact idea of the layout of your scene. And so I'm going to go ahead and start drawing those lines of perspective that will go back to our vanishing points. To do this, we'll switch back to our line tool, and then we're going to take and draw the lines outwards from the vanishing points. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. And the lower plane, as you can see, will be our ground, and the upper plane here will be our sky or our ceiling. It all depends again on what your composition is for your scene. Now the distance or the space in between these lines are also arbitrary, and they also depend upon what you are creating for your project. And I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of reference lines for the top of either our ceiling or our sky. And then I'm going to go ahead and start drawing from our second perspective point, our vanishing point, the same type of lines on the ground. Now these lines can be used for anything in your composition. You can be drawing mountains here in the foreground with the clouds. You can draw, basically whatever you want to use in regards to this grid line. And what this will do will allow you to create a path for an animation, or it can also help you establish scale with characters or with objects in your scene, and also helps with, of course, perspective. So now that we got our perspective grid, I'm going to go ahead and make another layer because I want to just keep this as a reference layer. So we're just going to go down here to our timeline, as you can see, and under this tab New, we're going to go ahead and select that, and this is where we add a new layer. And this new layer is going to be called, I'm going to do, just as an example, boxes in a room. So we just choose box, and we want to make sure that the position is above the current layer. You can do under current layer as well, but it's better to see the lines if it's above. And our post behavior is usually set to default to hold. I always choose none because I animate frame to frame. And then you just push OK. So now that we have a new layer under our, on top of our perspective grid here, you can see this is our perspective grid and it's untitled. And we have our box layer that we're going to draw our boxes on. Now, for purposes of filing and also creating a more congruent database for your projects, I would recommend naming all your layers to keep them organized. So I'm going to name this guide layer, and this will be used for so that we know that this is the layer we're using for our guide. So we push OK, and we go ahead and go back up to our box layer and make sure that this is highlighted, this whole layer is highlighted, because if it's not and this one is highlighted, you're going to be drawing on this layer and it's going to be real difficult to separate your box lines or whatever project you're working on from the guide layer. And you can also, there's a tab up here, it says lock. You can also lock your layer so that you don't accidentally draw on that layer. And that is the same feature they have in Flash, if you ever use Flash from Adobe. And so again, I'm just going to select that box layer, make sure it's highlighted. And I'm just going to start using the line tool to create boxes in this, in the foreground here. So we're just going to draw, I'm going to select a point on the grid, and I'm just going to draw a line straight down. And as you can see, that line has touched the floor, and our line is it's kind of light, so I'm going to go ahead and make it a little darker. You could do this by increasing the brush size a little, but also if you go down here to our layers, our guide layer has this box underneath that says 100%. Looks like a thumbnail layer. But if you go ahead and pull that down, it changes the opacity of that layer. So as you can see in our stage window, it gets lighter and lighter, or the opacity becomes less and less opaque. And I'm just going to leave it at like 28%. Something like 30 is good. So that way our foreground is a little darker and a little more prominent. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish this box and show you exactly how this is done. We're just keeping in mind that these lines go to this vanishing point so we can keep the perspective layer. And as you can see, we finished the front face of the box. And now we can finish the side face of the box. And there we have our one box, and you can repeat this process for however number of boxes you want in your scene. Or if you're not even using boxes, you can repeat this for like buildings. You can repeat this for your landscapes. As you can see, I'm keeping in mind as I complete these lines, I'm keeping in mind kind of like where the perspective for the vanishing point goes, so I can keep all these objects in perspective. So there we have our second box, and this also works if we want to draw some more foreground boxes, something that comes off camera, and or they could be buildings. If you're creating, even if you're like creating a scene or a comic book or These work great. And there we have a rooftop, or just a regular box top. You can inset it a little bit using the lines, keeping in our perspective here. And there's a lot of uses for this. Also, as I mentioned before, not just perspective for objects within our scene, but also it can be used as an animation tool for the path of our character. As I said, it helps you create the size, keeping the size of the character in scale. All you have to do is draw, when you're drawing your character, your character, for instance, probably will be, if these are boxes in a room, your character might be that tall here. And then, but as you see, as the grid comes across, you know that by the time the character reaches here, at this point in the room, the character is going to be probably about this tall. As you can see, it helps you create the scale and keep it in perspective, and it will continue as the person travels through the scene, and it will continue to grow bigger until it goes off screen. And this is because of our vanishing point is here and here, and it works with all the objects within the scene. So that's basically what the first line tool does. The second line tool, as you can see, like our stroke tool, it's called a filled line. And basically this does, when you create shapes, for instance, if we create another box here, let's create another box on top of this box. We take and the first line here, and then we take and create a second line, and then create the third line. And when we close the fourth line, it will fill in our face with whatever color we have selected over here on the left hand side in our color picker. So as you can see, mine's black. You can change this and create different colors, and it's a really good way to create fast and accurate fills for your objects in your scene. As you can see, I'm trying to build on this box, so we got to take and work with the original shape that was on the box. So I have to draw the geometry out for that. And there we go. So as you can see, that tool is really, really effective in creating quick fills for our shapes and our geometry. And so just go ahead and keep playing around with it. I recommend just trying different things, different approaches for your tools, and keep practicing. Till next time, keep animating, and I hope to see you back soon.